I built my own Denzel, one beyond their control. I've manufactured Denzels before, but this one was different. This was creation, not construction. As the spark of her took hold, there was something I didn't expect, something I didn't even know that I was looking for. She, Cherry, gave life to me. She is my happiness. We shared a beautiful life together, but we still planned to find the truth. We just never got the chance. Because one night, Infinite came for us.
Hello and welcome to Geeky Gaming Reviews, where each game is thoroughly and meticulously reviewed using my 100-point scoring system that I've developed. I don't pander or play favorites, and I hold each game to the same rigorous standards to make sure that you get a high-quality, unbiased review every time. If you'd like to watch a short video explaining my scoring system, you can check out the link in the description below. Today I'm going to be reviewing the game Cookie Cutter from developer Rogue Games Incorporated. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I was super excited for Cookie Cutter before it was released. And I got to give credit to Rogue Games for their advertising campaign because they did an excellent job selling it prior to its release. So they put out this trailer that was like, "Meet Cherry, perfect android fighting machine. Cherry is angry. Help her tear enemies limb from limb. Help her get her revenge. Explore the megastructure. Collect brutal weapons. Show them what happens when you mess with Cherry." So, obviously I got super excited about it because I love Metroidvanias, and it seemed like it had a great premise and would have been a refreshing and colorful addition to a genre that tends to lean towards the dark and dreary. However, the finished product that I received on release day was disappointing considering how much the game had been hyped up. And while Cookie Cutter certainly isn't a bad game by any means, it does leave much to be desired, and fails to stand out as anything more than another mediocre Metroidvania, adrift in a sea of games, soon to be forgotten. Cookie Cutter presents the player with a world filled with colorful and interesting places and characters. It's bright, loud, and in your face, and isn't afraid to use excessive vulgarity, sexual innuendo, and over-the-top graphic violence. In other words, it definitely isn't suitable for kids. A recurring thought that kept coming to mind while I was playing was that the developers must have been heavily influenced by the Borderlands games because of how much its overall mood and aesthetic reminded me of them, with its carefree and nonchalant delivery of violence and vulgarity. However, Cookie Cutter takes this concept to such extremes that it starts to feel silly and inauthentic in that delivery. The main objective of the game is to track down Cherry's lover, Dr. Shinji, who has been kidnapped by Salem Garbanzos, the head of the Infonet Corporation, who happens to look like a cross between Marilyn Manson and Butthead, and appears to spend more time fixing his makeup than running a corporation. While the megastructure is filled with various computer terminals that explain its lore and inform players of the various atrocities of the Infonet Corporation, very little plot action actually happens throughout the game, and the majority of your time is spent exploring various sectors of the megastructure in pursuit of Dr. Shinji, essentially creating a scenario where not much actually happens throughout a game that tries to sell itself as suspenseful and action-packed. The hand-drawn graphic style of Cookie Cutter is bright, colorful, and in your face. The developers were mostly successful with the aesthetic they were trying to cultivate, and I gotta say, it is pretty refreshing to see a Metroidvania that isn't afraid to get crazy with the color palette, especially with the current trend favoring dark gothic environments. The megastructure is littered with graffiti, science experiments, and other colorful and strange things, and keeps you constantly stumbling across strange and exciting things that keep exploration interesting. Audio adds another layer to the cyberpunk environment the developer is trying to cultivate, with music ranging from futuristic electronic tunes to guitar-heavy rock tracks that again remind me of some of the music from Borderlands. And while the music certainly isn't anything spectacular, it does fit the game well. My main gripe related to audio is the fact that the opening scenes of the game trick you into believing that there will be voice acting, but as soon as Salem takes off with Shinji and Cherry's mangled body is returned to its previous state, the voice acting disappears, never to return. The gameplay and mechanics of Cookie Cutter, while being generally fun and manageable, are definitely not without their flaws. You can tell that Cherry's creators wanted you to be able to have fun with movement, because she begins gaining abilities like the double jump and air dash very early in the game, which definitely comes in handy considering the fact that there are an abundance of environmental hazards and platforming challenges throughout the game. Cherry's movement feels smooth and satisfying and could probably be best described as bouncy. And the bounciness doesn't stop with Cherry. The same physics carry over into combat, allowing Cherry to send enemies flying in every direction across the screen with her attacks. Combat focuses mainly around health and void, the two stats on the upper left-hand corner of the screen, with void, the equivalent of MP, being used for special abilities and weapon attacks. Cherry also starts the game with a healing ability that allows her to trade Void for health at a 1-to-1 rate. Cherry's attacks consist of unarmed attacks, which deal less damage but accumulate Void, and weapons and special attacks, which deal heavier damage but cost Void to use. Cherry also gets a telekinesis type ability pretty early on that allows her to send anything that gets too close to her flying across the screen, allowing you to throw props around and play environmental hazard ping pong with enemies. Cherry has a variety of different specials and weapons that can be obtained throughout the game and can be equipped using the weapon wheel. Weapons can be upgraded at the shop to deal more damage and learn new attacks, and while a good variety of weapons and abilities are available, the actual combat, which I expected to be more complex and combo-oriented, ended up feeling more button-mashy than anything else, with all weapon attacks using different combinations of the Y button. And to be completely honest, once you have a fully upgraded Nitro Bunny, which is unquestionably the best weapon in the game, there's really no need to use any other weapon, with the exception of maybe the laser, which is needed to light bongs, which open various doors around the megastructure. Cherry's final special, Hyperdrive, also happens to be so overpowered that it turns the final boss into a cakewalk. Cherry's component system functions the way that you would expect your typical charm system to work, with some components being upgradable and all of them requiring between 1 and 4 energy to equip. And while it is a simple and efficient system, it does feel like there are an excessive amount of energy cells hidden around the megastructure, adding yet another opportunity to make Cherry overpowered to the point of imbalance. The controls are smooth and easy to use, and because of the game's bouncy physics, Cherry is incredibly agile and able to move across platforming challenges with relative ease. Use of the weapon wheel freezes combat, allowing you to change weapons and special attacks stress-free. My only real issue with the controls is the rigid timing of the parry buttons, but I've never been great with the parry in the first place, so it's probably more of a personal issue than anything else. And Cherry is able to execute a dodge roll and an air dash, so the parry isn't necessary to evade attacks anyway. The level design is excellent, with a large interconnected map to explore filled with secret areas, breakable walls, and an overabundance of obtainable abilities, components, energy cells, and items. The megastructure is littered with a large variety of platforming challenges, many of which require precision use of certain abilities and weapons. And platforming is mostly enjoyable, with the exception of maybe a couple questionably placed spike traps, which will kill you if you bump into the side of them. There are also plenty of checkpoints and shortcuts, preventing you from having to do any excessive backtracking. Denzel stations are also scattered around, which allow you to fast travel and swap components, and there is no penalty for dying, allowing you to explore the megastructure relatively stress-free. Enemy design, on the other hand, is not good. There are only maybe 15 to 20 different enemies scattered throughout the game, with many enemies simply reskinned with a different color and higher HP being repeated across the different parts of the megastructure, and many enemies sharing the same two attacks: a melee strike or an aimed projectile. And while these aren't the only two attacks, they make up for more than half the attacks you will encounter throughout the game. Boss fights are not very challenging and have fairly predictable attacks. Two of the earlier bosses only seemed to have two attacks, and I was able to beat many of them on my first try. The final boss is able to do an insane amount of damage in one hit. Cherry is so overpowered by the end of the game that it doesn't even matter. Overall, it just feels like a lot more attention should have been put into designing better enemies and balancing Cherry's power level. Cookie Cutter also, unfortunately, has its fair share of playability issues. I encountered quite a few audio and visual bugs while playing. Sound effects will get stuck playing on repeat, the weapon wheel will glitch out from time to time, entire screens will fail to load occasionally, and Cherry's healing ability will sometimes randomly cause her to freeze in place for a couple seconds in the middle of combat, usually causing you to take damage. Now, while none of these bugs are truly game-breaking and can usually be fixed by saving and restarting the game, they are still frequent and severe enough to make the game incredibly frustrating at times. Cookie Cutter doesn't seem to have much in terms of replayability. There aren't any different modes you can enter after beating the game. There don't appear to be any alternate endings. There aren't any optional dungeons or bosses, and there really doesn't seem to be much to do after you've obtained all weapons and abilities in the game. So, now that I've covered all aspects of Cookie Cutter, if I grade it using my 100-point scoring system, the score sheet is going to look like this. Cookie Cutter isn't by any means a bad game. It has some genuinely enjoyable gameplay with excellent controls, top-notch hand-drawn graphics, and a large map to explore full of secrets and quirky characters. However, it is held back by a substantial amount of bugs and glitches, piss-poor enemy design, and a lack of replayability, as well as a storyline and characters that can at times be goofy and cartoonish to the point of making the game feel childish. I'm giving it a final score of 6.8 and a difficulty level of 5. So thank you guys so much for checking out my review. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really does help me out. And check out the other videos on my channel. Till next time, this is Geeky, checking out.